Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Did you see that gang of 8 workers were arrested for looting the flood-ravaged area of Tennessee after Hurricane Helene? Did you see that one, Morgan? The 8 people that got arrested? Did you notice something suspicious about them when you saw the mugshots? Or I should say the collage of mugshots? You didn't see the collage? Okay. Well, let me paint a picture for you. 8 people. All male. Not white. Not black. Not legal citizens. Oh, man. Dang it. A stupid narrative. Keeps coming around and messing with people. 8 migrants looting the victims of Hurricane Helene. Wonderful. I was just asking Morgan off camera. I was talking to the live stream about it as well, and I guess I'll pass it on to all of you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but do you think that it is a good idea if you are running to become the vice president of the United States that you flip people off? Well, Tim Walz apparently does. So Tim Walz flipped off a fan. We broke it down. I was willing to give this like a 85% chance it was a middle finger with some plausible deniability there. A hefty amount that, maybe he's got his thumb in a weird position. It's possible his index finger is bent that his thumb was in a weird position, that this is his index finger. But I don't know. And Morgan watched it too. She came over. I blew it up, maxed it out on the screen here, and she says it's a middle finger too. I mean, I would say that it's pretty certain that's a middle finger. Now, if you're going to run around flipping people off, I am told that the adults are supposed to be in charge again, not the darn Donald Trump-be-like people. Now, there's Tim Walz flipping off a Michigan fan that yelled Trump 2024. Not a particularly good look. Hey, news media is not covering that. That's a little strange. You know what else that they're not covering? Even though we just got an update on one of the assassination plots and everything else, they're not covering MSNBC having a panelist on. His name is Eddie Glaude or whatever. I don't know if that's how you say his name. I just like naming him after a air freshener plug-in. And he went on MSNBC and he said that Trump needs to be, that Kamala Harris needs to bust Trump in the mouth. Now that sounds like violent rhetoric. Right after Trump is almost murdered 2 times. And there's been 4 plots we know of and 5 active hit teams that are out after him right now, according to the federal government. That doesn't sound like that's very productive. America's favorite mayor, Tiffany Henyard from Illinois, Democrat. She is America's worst mayor. Remember that lady? The one that's been using taxpayer dollars to throw parties and stuff like that? I got some sad, sad news, ladies and gentlemen. The lady mayor has been hit with an eviction notice for her house. Now, how is it? What was that party that we were just talking about? Was it last week? How many tens of thousands of dollars did she spend on that thing? If she's going to steal the money, she couldn't steal a little bit of it to go ahead and pay her rent? Okay. She owes at least $3,350. That's it? She paid the DJ a heck of a lot more than that at the party. So that's what she owes in back rent. Well, she hasn't paid, so her landlord has hit her with an eviction notice. Listen, hey, that landlord, gutsy, okay? Gutsy. Very, very gutsy. It was $85,769 on that community party. That's what it was. 85 grand. She couldn't take $4,000 up. I'm not saying she should have. I'm just saying she didn't think to take $4,000 of it and pay back rent. No, of course not. But if you're her landlord and you know that this woman is insane and you give her an eviction notice and she's the mayor of the city, oh, that takes guts. Takes guts. I'll give it to the landlord. Good for them. But she's been hit with an eviction notice. How embarrassing is that? Jeez. All right. Alvin, is it Lou or Louis? I don't know how you say it. Left-wing media literacy push brainwashes kids in schools. Politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez believe public schools should teach kids how to weed out misinformation and disinformation. They really mean don't question the official narrative. So this is AOC. Now, she released a video here not that long ago where she talked about the need for media literacy, which is hysterical coming from AOC, but I digress. And the importance of, and I quote, reining in the media environment. Okay, so once again, this is a lot like what John Kerry was saying, and we were talking about yesterday, particularly in the first half of the show. This isn't about any of that. This is actually about, hey, you don't question the narrative. We will have the gatekeepers, which will tell you what is and is not true. If you deviate from what they say, then you're going to be punished in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just being ostracized in public. So what she is actually pushing for is legislation that could suppress truthful information contradicting the narrative promoted by anti-American mainstream media outlets. The concept of media literacy is often portrayed as a tool of enlightenment for our youth. However, what's marketed as media literacy in K-12 education may be one of the most insidious forms of indoctrination in recent times, especially when driven by organizations like the News Literacy Project. This development should concern every parent, educator, citizen who values the future of free thought. So the News Literacy Project, they tell you that they're a nonpartisan initiative, and the goal is to equip young people and students with the tools to navigate the media landscape. But when you start peeling back the layers, it's a very, very, very different type of an organization, as left-wing organizations typically are. So their leadership, they have these ambassadors, they have affiliated reporters, all of them overwhelmingly and overtly left-wing. So this is a very biased environment. Now, all of their media partners that it considers to be credible sources actually come from left-wing media companies like CNN and the New York Times. BuzzFeed, okay, you should laugh hysterically. BuzzFeed is considered a credible news source. Okay? Morgan's still new here. She kind of threw up in her mouth there over a little bit, and she kind of contorted, and she's like, what? Because everybody knows that BuzzFeed is not a legitimate news source. MSNBC is on there. Honestly, it's on there as good, reliable news agencies. Wrong. They're not. They're terrible, and you should never pay attention to them at all unless you triple vet whatever they say. Students are being taught to trust only legacy media outlets, those that often follow government narratives, while independent journalists and alternative media sources, particularly on platforms like X, are dismissed as media illiterate and labeled as dangerous misinformation. So when educators teach children to rely only on mainstream media and government agencies for information, they condition them to accept a narrow narrative. You know, kind of like when they told you that the COVID vaccines will keep you from spreading COVID to another person and will keep you from actually getting COVID, which was, of course, a lie. A lie that they knew the moment they were handed the test data. But they chose to tell you anyway. The World Health Organization told you that COVID wasn't even spread from person to person. Remember that? Long after they knew that it was spread from person to person. And they told the international community that it could not be spread through people. Weeks after they knew the truth. But they were the official narrative. Trump-Russia collusion is real, except it wasn't. Starting to catch the drift? This is a lot like what John Kerry was talking about at his little Davos speech. But it's more insidious than that. Most parents want their kid to grow up, and they want their kid to go to college, right? You want your kid to maybe even go to an elite college. if you go to an elite college, it's not necessarily that you're going to get a better education or that you're not going to get a good education at another college. The idea is you hope that they get a better education, but really the reason you send them to an elite school is it opens doors. Whether having that school on their resume opens doors for them or meeting people who are connected at that school will open doors for them. Doesn't really matter. That's the point of putting them in an elite college. Now, what if I told you there's some new research about that, and even left-wing The Atlantic is talking about it, that paints a very dreary picture of your child's capability when they go to these elite colleges and universities in the United States. We'll talk about that coming up next on The Burning Truth. All right. Elite colleges in the United States of America. Don't forget, you can watch the live stream on Rumble, rumble.com/Casey the host. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button if you would. I'd appreciate that. If you're sending your kid to an elite college, that means they got into the elite college, right? So there's a test. You still take a test to go to college, right? Did you break another switch on our board? Can you just kill the board so we can get a new board, please? Like, this thing is driving me nuts this past couple of weeks. So I'm told that they still, according to the live stream, they still force you to take a test to get into college, particularly at elite colleges, like Columbia. Okay, so you graduate high school, you go to test for college, you do well enough to go to an elite school like Columbia, you get into Columbia, they let you in, you're there, you're part of the student body. And then along comes The Atlantic. Not known for great writers over there at The Atlantic, but occasionally they hit pay dirt, and they did that this time. At elite colleges like Columbia, many students, please listen very closely when I read this next part. Many students are showing up unprepared to read full books. It's college, so you got to read books. It's an elite college, so you have to read, books. Columbia, in addition to that, is one of the biggest journalism schools in the world. So I would assume you'd have to read books. And you're telling me that elite students get through high school, take their SATs, get accepted to elite schools like Columbia, show up to Columbia, and the professors are like, they can't read a book? Huh? Oh, are they too focused on old tampon Tim giving boys tampons in the boys' bathroom? Are they too focused on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez teaching about recognizing, any dissenting opinion from the federal government in schools, which, she'll flip that, by the way. If Trump wins, then we can't have these programs anymore because Trump will control them. Nicholas Dames has taught literature humanities at Columbia University's required great books course. He's been doing this since 1998. He loves the job, but it has changed. Over the past decade, students have become overwhelmed by the reading. Really? Have they become overwhelmed? I wonder if Professor Dames has changed the curriculum since he's been doing it since 1998. Maybe he's still trying to hone his skills as a professor. College kids have never read everything they're assigned. That's of course, but this feels different. His students now seemed bewildered by the thought of finishing multiple books a semester. His colleagues have noticed the same problem. Many students no longer arrive at college, even at highly selective elite colleges, prepared to read books. Huh. Who could have predicted this? If you only had a radio host for 20 plus years telling you, hey, we got this research out there that I think is a little concerning. The average person will read the headline and maybe up to the first 3 paragraphs, and then they'll give up. and they'll argue for days with you about a point that is disproven in paragraph 7. This development puzzled Professor Dames until one day during the fall of 2022, when a first-year student came to his office hours to share how challenging. Okay, I'm assuming after hours. Oh, did she, Professor? To share how challenging she had found the early assignments. Listen, I'm not judging this young lady. I'm just saying that a first-year female college student who was struggling in his class went to his office after hours to ask about her grade. But I'm not judging. No, I would never. It's 2024. I'm trying to be a better person. I would never, ever jump to any conclusions like that. Lit Hum often requires students to read a book, sometimes a very long and dense one, in just a week or two. But the student told Dames that at her public high school, she had never been required to read an entire book. She had been assigned excerpts, poetry, and news articles, but not a single book cover to cover. My jaw dropped, he said. The anecdote helped explain the change that he was seeing in his students. It's not that they don't want to do the reading, it's that they don't know how. Oh. You don't know how to read it. Okay, listen, I feel like I could create one of those e-courses and charge for this. Can you put that on Patreon or something, Morgan? Is that something that you could? Okay, here's my e-course. You ready? All right, so you get a book. Now, in the United States, the spine of the book faces your left. So the front of the book is going to face up. Just put it on the table. Spine to the left, front up. Now, what you do is you flip open the page from right to left, okay? You're going to go to page number 1, and you're going to read from the top left all the way to the bottom right. When you're done with that, this is the tricky part. You flip the page over and you do it again. And you keep doing it until you're done, and then you close the book. Congratulations, you have read your first book. College student who says that they know more than me about everything in the world and can't read a stupid book. Man, they don't know how to do that, Morgan. They don't know how. They don't know how. They don't know how to read a book. Wow. Okay. If you say so. Talk about going to bat for your dumb students. I'm shocked that he named this poor lady. He named her. He named the young lady who was struggling to read and was struggling with her grade, who visited him in his office after hours. He named her. Not okay, dude. Not okay. Got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Don't forget to go to 953mnc.com. Get your tickets for 95.3 MNC's Noise, which is Saturday, October 26th at the Lerner Theater in Elkhart, Indiana. From Newsmax, host of the Rob Schmidt Tonight program, Rob Schmidt, who is also a Carmel, Indiana native. He is going to be our keynote speaker as part of the panel, which, of course, you will be able to participate with and ask all sorts of questions. News media coverage, politics, the upcoming election, and tons more. You can go to 953mnc.com today. Tickets start at just $40, and you can go ahead and get those tickets. And we'll see you October 26th, which is, again, a Saturday at the Lerner Theater in Elkhart, Indiana. All right. Interesting stuff has been happening in the St. Joseph County area. A bunch of people got together, Republicans and Democrats, in an unusual bipartisan display. Former Democratic Councilman Henry Davis Jr. and leaders from the St. Joseph County Republican Party held a joint press conference on Tuesday morning to address growing concerns surrounding St. Joseph County Judge of Probate Court Jason Cichowicz. The gathering took place outside of the Juvenile Justice Center as concerned community members watched in solidarity. Now, this has been a very interesting saga because Cichowicz, Democrat, long known to be corrupt, has been admonished by the Indiana Supreme Court is in a bitter battle for his political life at this point in time, and tons of Republicans and Democrats have kind of come together to say, this is not the guy that should remain in office. So stealing some money and getting slapped down with a 45-day suspension by the Indiana Supreme Court. Then you got this incident where basically you have a program where you have a supervised field trip of somebody, young person who is, go to a baseball game. They escaped, they then killed somebody under his watch. Just a lot of ugly stuff has been happening. That's just what's been happening as of late. So you got Republicans, you got Democrats. The Republican Party demanded that he step down. Now you got Democrats joining in with Republicans saying that he needs to go. You got, local news is even all over it, which is a rare thing to actually see. Local news doesn't always get involved in these things, but they are, wanting Cichowicz gone. So interesting to see a bipartisan effort to remove a judge from their position. So we'll see ultimately what happens, I guess. Brian Stelter has announced a very interesting new thing that CNN is going to be doing. Maybe you've never heard of this. So CNN is going to start charging people to look at the stuff that's on CNN's website. And the cost is going to be $3.99 a month for you to see what's on CNN's website. Sound familiar? Remember CNN Plus back in 2022? How long did that last? About a month? 2 months, was it? Something like that. I don't know. But it was basically CNN plus a couple of extra things, and you paid a monthly stipend for it. And CNN Plus folded, 1 month. It folded 1 month after it launched. Miserable failure. Nobody was interested in it. I don't know anybody who actually gets their news from CNN. I know people in my business who monitor CNN and then make fun of them when they tell you things that are not true. And then you're forced to watch it in airports and things like that. But I don't know anybody who actually turns on CNN as their news, which is why the ratings are garbage. And yet they think they're going to go ahead and charge you $3.99 a month to be able to access content on their website. Okay? You put that content behind a paywall, CNN. Let's see exactly what happens with that. I doubt that it's going to be a very big success. So now you've got the head of the Iranian spy group. Of course, the Middle East continues to be a powder keg. Wasn't it like a year ago that you had the Joe Biden peeps out there telling you that there would be peace in the Middle East? No. It was more than, it was 2 years ago. And then you had the terrorist attacks, and then you have this. Yeah. So obviously there's not peace in the Middle East. I mean, there was under Donald Trump. There just isn't now. So the head of an Iranian spy group was targeting the Israeli Mossad. Like, that's their intelligence services. Well, things went wrong because, the Mossad are very talented espionage agents. And I think that most of you probably know that. So Mossad actually was leading the Iranian spy group because the head of the Iranian spy group targeting Mossad was actually an Israeli agent. Now tell me when you're the grand poobah of Iran and you hear that and you go, wait a minute, the head of our agency, which is designed to be hunting the Mossad, is actually a Mossad agent? You imagine? They had to have executed a few people. Had to have. The Israelis have proven in recent weeks that they're not folks that you want to mess with. They took out dozens of Hezbollah terrorists in an audacious exploding pager plot. They systematically hunt down Hamas terrorists. They send their leaders to early graves. And they just wiped out an entire generation of Hezbollah fighters with a massive airstrike in Beirut. Hey, let's not forget the two-way radio explosions and the solar panel explosions. Those were all good too, okay? You don't want to just stop at what was it? Operation Shalom, I think is what people are affectionately referring to the pager operation as. If you're an anti-Israel terrorist these days, It must be hard getting some sleep. There's a good chance he won't wake up. Now, the Islamic Republic's former president is admitting that the Israelis even managed to penetrate Iranian security services that were, wait for it, tasked with targeting the Jewish state's intelligence service, Mossad. So there is a CNN affiliate called CNN Turk. So it's like CNN for Turkey. And the former president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad of Iran, told CNN Turk that a further 20 agents in the Iranian intelligence team tasked with monitoring Israeli spying activities also turned against Tehran. The alleged double agents provided Israel with sensitive information on the Iranian nuclear program, according to his comments on the interview, which were widely picked up by international media. And I'm sorry, I think that is flipping funny. The head of your agency hunting Mossad is actually Mossad. That is some top-notch spycraft there, Israel. I got to hand it to you. Kudos. And, the fact that he even admitted that. I don't know why he admitted that. I wouldn't be surprised if Ahmadinejad ends up dead at some point. Occasionally he mouths off, but I wouldn't be surprised. We got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. Well, that's weird. AARP, those jerks who keep trying to tell me that I'm old and that I need to join AARP even though I don't qualify to join AARP. That's really annoying, by the way. And I will probably never join AARP. But they are super liberal, like very, very left-wing. And AARP did their own poll because they always have massive influence in politics. Because we're talking about a senior citizen vote. And guess what? Senior citizens tend to vote. They tend to show up. Sometimes they vote for years after they pass away. So AARP's polls on their members are usually a big deal in politics, even if it's not scientific and it's just a poll. So, well, they released the results of their poll. And while Kamala Harris is leading nationally, the Democratic nominee is trailing behind Trump among older voters, according to AARP. Now, again, it depends on what poll you look at and whether or not she's ahead. Trump is leading Harris by 8 points among Pennsylvania voters over the age of 50. Oh. At the same time, Harris is narrowly leading Trump by 2 points at 49% and 47%, respectively, across the key battleground state. That's just in Pennsylvania. That's kind of nuts. So in Pennsylvania, older voters are favoring Trump. That is not typical. That is atypical and could be a sign of things to come. Pennsylvania, which has the largest electoral count of all 7 swing states, is a particularly consequential state for presidential hopefuls to win. Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes have helped 12 of the last 15 presidents secure their victories. Wow. So interesting. And both candidates are viewed unfavorably, but Trump is still seen as the better option among older voters. Huh. So AARP surveyed 1,398 likely voters across Pennsylvania. That was between the 17th and 24th of September. However, the margin of error is 4 points. What have I told you about polls that have 4 points? Well, you got to discount them. So it's interesting in that it's an unusual thing, but you can't take that one to the bank. But I just, it's atypical. Might as well mention it. It's not something you typically see out of AARP. Something else that's not getting a massive amount of attention, like it would if it were going the other way, is more than 200 retired admirals and generals have now endorsed Donald Trump. With the United States facing arguably the most important election since our nation was founded, more than 200 retired generals and admirals are endorsing former President Donald Trump for president. In a letter published Monday morning, Flag Officers for America issued a stinging indictment of the failed policies of Joe Biden and his Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrats' replacement standard bearer following the party's silent coup in July. The endorsement is also a countershot at the recent letter from Trump-hating former national security officials who are endorsing Harris. Those security officials, again, all have contracts, which stands to benefit if Kamala wins, but that's typically the case. Now, if this were in any way, shape, or form, if this were any kind of an endorsement of a Democrat, the news media would be all over it because it's a big deal. You're talking about hundreds of retired commanders here. And if a Democrat gets it, it boosts their bona fides quite a bit on foreign policy. If a Republican gets it, they just kind of stay quiet. They ignore it. It doesn't actually, get any coverage because they don't want it to get any coverage, because the goal is to paint Donald Trump as somebody who, called military personnel suckers and losers, even though that never happened. And as a result, they don't cover it. Then you've got this. A peer-reviewed study on the benefits of scientific rigor. This is almost, I probably should have done the beginning of the show with this stuff and gone like this, right into the Columbia story about reading books, and really could have made it all about the lack of actual accountability and research and education in this country. In 2023, Potsko et al. Published a scientific study showing that scientific rigor can lead to replicable results. All right? Now, if you go back to middle school, you get taught the scientific method, or you're supposed to be. I don't think they teach it anymore. Where you see something in nature, it gives you an idea, which of course is a hypothesis. You then, come up with a plan to study that, and then you go ahead and you work through the process, and that's how science advances. And hopefully you can duplicate those results. In the peer-reviewed publication Nature, Potsko claimed to have proven that following said scientific method actually makes for better science. Now, I suppose if you were to look at this and say, wow, following the scientific method that scientists have always used for science would prove to give you better results than, I don't know, computer models that just pull crap out of the air, you would probably go, well, duh, that's not a big surprise. So science has finally proven that the scientific method works and should be used in scientific research. Okay, not a big surprise. The study said that adhering strictly to the scientific method was a massive boost for researchers. Pre-registering, transparency, and large sample boosts psychology studies' replication rate by nearly 90%, it said. All right. So that's what you want. You want to be able to duplicate and replicate the results of the study. That usually means you're on to something. Cool. Now, here's where things get a little different. If you needed further proof that peer review is a complete joke, consider that the illustrious peer-reviewed Nature, which is a major scientific publication, has now retracted the study on scientific rigor for, get this, a lack of scientific rigor. Okay, so we've got a research paper that says to use the scientific method to get better results, and that scientific rigor is really, really good, and then the paper is retracted for lacking scientific rigor. Great. Joseph Back Coleman of the University of Konstanz and Bern Deviser of the University of Idaho published a critique of the article, which drew the scrutiny of the scientific community. Causal claims about scientific rigor require rigorous causal evidence. And that critique led to the authors of the study coming clean about their own lack of scientific rigor. Quote, "We are embarrassed by our elementary errors with reporting on the pre-registration and agree that they need to be addressed." Wow. They say that they're going to revisit the article at a future date with some updates. Okay. Not a good sign for humanity. See you tomorrow.
Podcasts by Federated Media.